Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Bit Bucket, the last session of the week for the MDS program. I'm Ed Jaffe from Phoenix Software. We have a list of distinguished speakers today, and we are going to speak in the exact order on the slide there, which should make it easy. We don't have to sort or anything like that in our minds, especially after such a long week, but a really great week. Yeah, this was a really great conference. Anyway, the purpose of the Bit Bucket is to put together a lot of sort of short subjects, small sessions, things that can't take up a whole hour but are still pretty interesting, things we want to talk about. It has quite a tradition going way back to Bob and Carl, for those of you who remember them. They started this, and this is Bit Bucket Hex 36. Who can do the math? 54. The 54th running of the Bit Bucket. So we feel very honored to be a part of this whole thing, and we do our best to try to continue the tradition. Okay, so I'm going to go first, and I'm going to start with German engineering. So I went to, I presented in Germany in March, and at the GuideShare GSC conference over there in Landstein. And this guy co-presented with me, this guy Robert Herring. And he's from ITSO, so he's sort of like what Frank used to be, or like Paul Rogers, one of those guys, only over there in Germany. And he had a whole bunch of things, but one of the things he talked about, Herr Herring, I don't know, I just love that. Anyway, he talked about this tool that he had written called ISPF SFTP. And it's cool because ITSO has a whole bunch of tools, actually, that they make available that they write, and they have, all the latest kit, the, hardware and software and stuff, so they can make it work as long as they got spare time to work on it. And it was very cool because it was SFTP from an ISPF prompt. And I said, whoa, how is it Americans have never heard of this? I never heard of this, and I kind of keep my ear to the ground. Has anybody seen this ISPF SFTP? Not a one. And it was so cool. The guy's showing it, and I'm like, I gotta bring that back to the States. So that's the URL there to get to this page with all these tools. And it's actually really big. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there. But the one that we're looking at today, the one at the very bottom there, is ISPF SFTP. And what it is, basically, it's a TSO utility, but it runs under ISPF. And it allows you to do an SFTP session right from your ISPF session. What else is cool about it is it allows you to script passwords. Now, anybody who's fooled around with SFTP probably has figured out by now that you cannot script passwords with SFTP. They make it so that you can do an interactive response of your password, but what you can't do is you can't put a password in some sort of password file like a netrc, or you can't put it right in the script or anything like that. And sometimes it's a little inconvenient. I realize it's more secure not to do that, and I'm not recommending you do that. But what intrigued me about this was I was able to do that, and I like doing that. So I'm just saying. I like to script that kind of stuff. So especially, like on a test system or something inside. So, because generating those keys is kind of a pain. So anyway, but it goes either way. You can use generated keys, right? Or you can do this password supplied in a password file, which of course you would have to lock down like you do with netrc today, right? And so I got really interested in this because of that capability. And the high-level qualifier of that file, of course, is pass file. And then this is just a sample of what's in there. And basically, this is just who you're connecting to, user ID at, and some site that accepts SFTP, that has an SFTP server. In this case, it's our public website. And it, depending on, if you're in different countries, this guy was very smart about making sure that it was not sensitive to any particular code page. So he would even put like this syntax in there, at, just in case the at sign didn't match what the program was looking for as an at sign and stuff like that. So, he really thought it through. It's very cool stuff. Anyway, so that's what the command line looks like. And in this case, I had a user ID that has no generated keys and no password file, okay? No generated keys meaning it doesn't, automatically, if you have the keys generated for SFTP, if you're not familiar, then you have in your home directory on ZOS, for example, you have a .ssh directory, and under there, you've generated some keys. And you take your public key, and you would actually install it over on the server side. And then when you connect, you don't have to put a password in, right? It just knows who you are. The share people there back there waving at me, trying to fluster me. It worked. Anyway. So, and then what you do is you end up getting all these error messages, right? Well, I can't find the password file, so I can't do a password. I try, you know, all these different approaches to make SFTP work, and you get failure messages out of all three of them. So you got to have at least one way of connecting with some sort of credential to be able to connect. Now, here's one where I don't have generated keys, and the password's not found, but I do have a password file. And in this case, it says, hey, the password couldn't be found, blah, 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 and then permission denied, et cetera, right? So it looks a little bit friendlier, but you still don't get in. In this case, no generated keys, but I did put a password in there. And lo and behold, right from my ISPF prompt, the thing says connected to, that's our public server right there. And then it has an SFTP prompt, and I said print the working directory, right? And it echoes that back, and then it writes out, hey, you're at home user ID 1. And then I said exit. Now, I don't really want to do anything, but at that point I could issue literally any SFTP command, get a file, put a file, whatever I want to do. So I thought that was pretty slick. And then I went to another user ID where I do have generated keys, where we run batch jobs regularly using SFTP to like get dumps off there that customers have loaded up or whatever. And so in this case, I had no password file, and I had exactly the same result, right? So it all totally worked in both of those cases. Now, scripted commands is kind of cool. You could basically put all those commands together in just some file. I did have trouble with it when I tried to use FB files, and I wrote to the guy, and he said, well, I don't really want to try to debug all that and whatnot, but try VB. I don't know why I didn't try VB to begin with. So I tried VB, and then it all worked. So keep that in mind if you play with this thing. Anyway, so, and in there, I wrote a script that just basically had the ISPF SFTP command, followed by PWD, followed by exit. And he's got this little Rex right here, IBAT SFTP. And then you give it a place to go read it from. Well, actually, this particular one happened to be FB, but the password file didn't work. I had to do VB on that guy. Anyway, and sure enough, it all worked there too. So right there, now I'm scripting, and I could do it with passwords because it'll go look for that password file. So I thought that was pretty cool. Then you can run the thing in batch. So here's a batch job, and blah, blah, blah. The one thing you have to do is if you're not running under ISPF, you need to provide a code page. Tell it what code page you're working with. If you are under ISPF, what it does is it looks at the Z-term CP variable, if you're familiar with that. And so it knows what code page you have, and then it converts everything using icon V over to ISO 8859-1. And that's what it all uses. So when you do it in batch, you have to tell it what code page you're working with. Or you can also, there's a way of setting environment variables. It's very well thought out, this thing, okay? And anyway, that's one of the environment variables you can set through that other method. Anyway, so I run that, and there's my commands right there, ISPF, SFTP, PWD, and exit. And lo and behold, connected to PWD, remote directory, exit, and we're done. So there it worked in batch. Now, the one thing about SFTP that's kind of a pain, and I will put a little bit of a plug in here for a couple of friends of mine, the guys that over at Dovetailed. They have a product that you can get for free, actually. It doesn't have any support on it if it's free. But it's called Cozy, capital C, lowercase o, :Z. And that thing is an SFTP implementation that does allow direct access to classic MVS data sets, right? But standard SFTP does not. And what this is essentially a shell around that. So what you end up having to do is sort of double copy. Now, by the way, we don't use Cozy at Phoenix, so we do this double copy all the time. Now, it's possible to, you can use a Unix CP command to write to an MVS data set. So what you do is you do a get, for example, with SFTP into a working directory. Then you do CP to copy it to an MVS file. which you can actually allocate on the fly using CP. But it's very cumbersome if you're trying to do it interactively. It's got all these, keywords and syntax that's complex with just got to get just the right amount of quotes, double quotes, single quote. It's, it's not the kind of thing that you're just going to type. So what this guy came up with is a bunch of utilities that would help with all that. One of them is ISPF SSH. What's cool about that, it seems a little redundant, but it's not. It lets you just run SSH, just literally, except it overrides the ability to let you use your password file and stuff like that. So basically, you're just running SSH, even from a ZOS Unix prompt or an SSH prompt, something like that. He's got one called MVS alloc that will let you just allocate a data set, just boom, like that. Both of these all work under ISPF or from OMVS. It automatically works in either environment. MVS to USS is a copy. It's funny that he has that and MVS to Unix. It's just kind of two different flavors of something very similar. And then so you just use the one you need for that particular need. And then going the other way, USS to MVS and Unix to MVS. So I just thought that was very cool. And the one thing about these utilities you got to keep in mind is that the default code pages are 1141. So for the first time in my life, I have to worry about this, right? Ordinarily, it's the Americans and that all defaults to our stuff. And it's these other guys that got to mess around with all that, right? They're the ones always having to worry about the code page and everything. So now I got to worry about it. I got to say, no, I use 1047, not 1141. 1141 is what they use in Germany. So keep that in mind if you play with this. You do need to override the code page to 1047 or you'll be in a world of hurt. I don't know. I did not try it with 37. I haven't used code page 37 in 20 years or something like that. So, but I know some people do. So, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. So, but I didn't try it. Okay. So, last but not least, this known hosts file, and this is just a standard SFTP thing. It's not necessarily ISPF SFTP, but you do have the ability in this thing to override this strict host key checking equals yes, which is a default that it uses, simply by coding this -NSHKC option when you run it. So you'd say ISPF SFTP space, that cryptic thing, and then what you're trying to connect to. And there's some other options too. So if you get the situation where you have an unknown host, then you could just run this with that option. And at that point, you get the message where it tells it that it got added in. That's kind of standard SFTP stuff. All right. So the next one is master the mainframe. They got a contest by that name, so I thought I'd just steal that. But anyway, if you came to my ZOS 2.3 user experience, you saw that I'd hoped that IBM ZOS 2.3 TSOE subsystem logon enhancement would allow, could replace my 18-plus-year-old modification that you can find on CBT 377 to allow you to log on as a subsystem in any subsystem, including master. And that's it down there. I guess I'm plugging all the rest of those. I'm going to plug the whole CBT tape. It's a great thing. Sam Golub's done a fantastic job. There's so many files out there now. And I'm sure a lot of it's obsolete, but still a lot of it's still good, including this. So basically the description, the way he put it over here, it's like, exits and mods to run TCAS under sub equals master. Well, actually, what I started out to do was to allow a logon under a secondary JES 2. That's really what I wanted. And that's what I got. But then master was sort of like this extra thing that was like, well, if master doesn't work, let's figure that out. And so anyway, and that turned out to be a super, super useful thing because it's a tool in your tool bag, right? It's a way of saving your system when JES won't come up. And it might, if you have a problem with JES, you can't get it up, and you're sitting there and you say, well, why don't I just log on under master, fix that parm, and then bring it up? That's a lot quicker than, okay, hang on, let's go get to our, other system, restore that guy, and then, depending on the situation, it could actually save you time. So basically, it consists of a couple of assembler exits and a zap. Now, the assembler exits take care of the prompting for the subsystem and also the creation of the SIB and putting it on the CSCB chain, if you're familiar with those control blocks. If you're not, it just works. And then the zap, I mean, you got the codes right there. And the zap is basically needed for this problem with logging on to master. So that's what it looks like. I'm not sure what the lighting looks like in here. But anyway, you say log on, and in the case of this thing, you put a question mark in front of the user ID. And then you log in, and then you start the log on, and it prompts you for which subsystem you want. In this case, I'm saying JES 2 because that's a secondary. It happens to be a primary JES 3 on this system. I get the normal login screen, and then I get logged in, and my C list you can see is printing out there and saying I'm logging on under JES 2. This happens to be 2.2. So then, what about master? So I do the same thing. Log on question mark that user ID. It prompts me. I put in master, get the prompt. Go to log in, and there it is, master. So I just logged on under master. Of course, from there, I can't submit a job. Hopefully that's obvious. And also, you need to make sure the VTAM and TCAS are up under master as well. If they depend on JES, you have a chicken and egg problem. This won't help you. Okay? So it would have in the old days when we still had, people still used VTAM and like that, but we don't do that anymore. Now everybody uses VTAM only. So then I was playing around with IBM's mod. Their change, their official change. And with them, it's different. You literally code subsys right on the logon command. So you can say subsys JES 2, you get the prompt. What's neat about it is got a new message that appears right here to tell you what subsystem you're now connecting to. And then when you do, sure enough, there I am, connecting under JES 2. But when I tried it with master, and it said, let me go to master, the result was this failure here and a bunch of SVC dumps and some junk written to the log. So IBM, they're saying they're going to maybe change something about this, and they wanted to make it fail more gracefully, and one of the ideas was, hey, let's just block master altogether. I'm like, no, don't do that, because the mod still works. You block it all together, and now well, then I got to mod that to let you in. So I thought I was done with this 18 years ago. So no, so hopefully they're not going to do that, and they're going to do something, and maybe they'll just make it work. That'd be great too, but I don't think that's going to happen by GA. In fact, I'm sure it won't. So so that zap part really is just for the master part. Okay, the rest of it was all needed in 2.2 and below, but now you only need the zap for 2.3. So that's a 2.2 version of the zap. That's a 2.3 version. And basically what you're doing is changing this one bit over there, basically, in a attached parameter list. So now with that thing installed, and by the way, it takes an IPL. It's in an LPA module, and even if you load it with setprog, LPA add, whatever, it doesn't work because apparently it's pointed to by something that's permanent. So I didn't want to mess with trying to figure all that. That would take me longer to figure that out than just IPL. Anyway, so now I do log on subsys master. There's the thing. And lo and behold, it works. So that one simple zap does work in 2.3, and so you can keep that, and now you still have the ability to get onto master, and you don't need all the rest of that mod on the CBT tape, just that one zap. And you don't even need that tape because I just put the zap right here in this presentation. So if you have this, you'll see the zap and you put it on. The only restriction is it doesn't support relog on. So once you're logged in, and I had never even tried it, IBM told me, you know how when you're logged on, you can log on again? Well, you can't log on. It's a huge restriction. You must type log off first, then log on. So FYI. Okay, last, sysprog, start your engines, or your zip engines. So in 2.3, IBM, they made good on their threat to auto start ZOSMF. And lo and behold, the thing does auto start. And that may not be, I mean, that's your call, not mine, but it may not be the best for all your systems. We happen to have one system. It's our DR machine in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's a ZBC12B03 with no zip. And really, zip is the key. If you have a zip, you're not going to have a problem, I wouldn't think, with ZOSMF auto starting. At least that's my experience. If you don't have a zip, then things are a lot harder, and you just have to make a judgment call, a business decision, whatever you want to call it. And in this particular case, we were waiting around, like 10, 15 minutes. And people couldn't really use TSO, and they were all upset. And now we did this DR. It was very cool. We were very proud of it. We brought a DS8870 in, and it hadn't even been configured. We had no starter system, DS8870 that hadn't even been touched, and a handful of tapes. And we literally configured all the volumes, restored some stuff, brought up everything from scratch, and we did it. It actually worked. So we were very happy about that. No starter system at all, just like right out of the ether. But then they thought there's something really wrong with this system because we're getting like 1 minute TSO response time. And I'm like, oh God, we got a real problem. And then I went, oh, wait a minute, I bet I know what it is. Because the system that we're backing up has a zip. And it's our, part of our production parallel sysplex. So I walk up into a console and I type in C space IZO server 1, enter, and I hear this cheer. So then I'm like, okay, all right, now I'm the hero, right? So after that, I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to make this not come up on its own. And so it turns out that you got this IZU PARM XX member. The default is 0. And there's if it's not even coded in there because the default is auto start local. And what that means is the first system to IPL will start ZOSMF. And all other systems in that same sysplex, as long as he's up, they'll just connect to him through XCF, right? So you're not going to bring up as one per system, just one per plex. And then when that guy goes down, another one will come up, and it's kind of sophisticated like that. Well, if there's any system you don't want to start, you don't want to force it on, you want to make sure he waits for somebody to connect to, then you code this auto start connect. Well, so if you just code auto start connect on every system, guess what? It doesn't start up. And then you're in control again. You could start it at your leisure where you want to start it, 2 o'clock in the morning or something where it won't bother people, So anyway, I just wanted to pass that along in case you hadn't seen my other presentation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tom Conley. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everyone. With apologies to Ronald Reagan, we're going to go into Trust But Verify. This is the city, Providence, Rhode Island. The story you're about to hear is true. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. My name's Conley. I'm a CISPROC. Only the old guys are laughing. The young guys have no idea what I just talked about. Okay. The royal guys. Do I have to say women as well? Yes, women as well. So, Widgets Co. They leased a Z12 for 4 years from Acme Computer. The lease terminates in July of 2018, and in December of 2016, they bought 2 additional CBU tests. They do a DR about once every 6 months. In April of 2017, the HMC said the CBU expires in July 2017. And we're like, wait a minute, we just bought them. Why are they expiring? Turns out that CBU has 2 types of records. You got a base record and you got test records. In this case, the base record was what was expiring in July of 2017. I was like, why is it expiring 3 years into a 4-year lease? That's got to be a mistake. Gotta, right? Well, turns out that all the original contract personnel at both Widgets and Acme were now gone. Okay, so nobody knew about the contract. The CBU terms, this is key, did not exist in writing anywhere. They searched, they could not find a written contract for the CBU terms. So Widgets contacted Acme. They figured it's got to be a mistake. It's going to be corrected very easily. Well, Acme said it wasn't a mistake. And to back that up, they pointed to this 3-year-old email that they got from a Widgets officer that said, we will do X number of CBU tests in 3 years. So Acme set the CBU base record for 3 years. And then Acme was more than happy to add another year for a 5-figure stick-em-up fee. Okay? I'm glad you're laughing because Widgets is still not laughing about this. They had to pay up because there's a DR test coming next week. And basically, attempts to escalate within Acme management proved futile. Figured somebody sooner or later high up enough in Acme management was going to say, hey, this is wrong, we got to fix this. But no, that didn't happen. Litigation would have taken longer than 1 year, and it would have cost more than the 5-figure stick-em-up. So they paid up. So what are the lessons? Get everything in writing. Acme knows all the tricks. You've got to be more thorough, okay? If you have turnover in your contract personnel, you have to have knowledge transfer. That's critical. Don't allow your contract personnel to go out the door without other people knowing what's on the contract, okay? In the end, as we all know, money talked, BS walked. Acme knew the base record would expire. They knew it. They knew the tests could not be used before the base expiration, and they sold them anyway, which ended up increasing their leverage against widgets. So try to be the roadrunner. Don't be Wile E. Coyote. Okay, with apologies to the late, great Ted Knight, you'll implement ATTLS v1.2 and like it. Okay, so SSL TLS v1.0 are no longer secure. PCI mandates TLS v1.1 at a minimum. They actually extended this deadline to June 30th. It was supposed to be this year. It looks really daunting, okay? I went to a lot of sessions at Share. I went to sessions at ZTechU, read everything I could find on ATTLS. Nobody had a step-by-step, nobody. I finally found this red book. Somebody told me about this red book this week. It was never referred to in any of the other TLS sessions I went to. So if nothing else, get this book if you're doing AT. How many have done TLS 1.2? Not that many. Okay. The rest of you will probably need to do it soon.
And there's a version 2 R2 version of that red book available.
Oh, the comment is there.
That's my Bible for it.
The comment is that there is a 2.2 version of this, and it was just published. So maybe we can look it up and update the slides. So I'll take a look at that. So notice this red book's been around since V1R12. I mean, it's an old red book. Why nobody's talking about it or mentioned it in these other sessions, I don't know. But the red book eventually, as you read through page after page after page, they show the steps I'll cover much more quickly here. It's a great reference. Wish I knew about it 6 months ago. Would have made my job a lot easier. So here's the Reader's Digest version, okay? It's fairly straightforward. You got to change your profile, TCP IP profile, TN3270 config, generate a certificate, create a policy, manually or with the ZOSMF config assistant. It turned out that while I ran the config assistant, I really didn't need to. I could have just taken a policy, cookie cuttered it, and slapped it in. So that's what I'm going to give you guys, a cookie cutter policy that you can slap in. You have to enable Pageant. I know the comm server guys are like, it's P-Agent. No, I like Pageant. No, they're good, like, it's P-Agent. So you're going to enable the policy agent started task. You have to create these serve-auth security profiles, and I'll show you how much fun you have if you don't. And basically, you could probably, if you have the ability to do all this dynamically, like maybe on a sandbox, you could probably do it in 1 or 2 hours. So I'll take the arrows, you get the glory. What could be better? Okay, so in your TCP IP profile, you make one change basically here to the TCP config. You just add the TTLS. That's it. Then what you want to do in your auto log is you're going to add Pageant here so that when TCP IP comes up, he brings up Pageant. The other thing is that for port map, there's a delay start TTLS command that you want to make sure that port map doesn't come up until the TTLS is active. There's some other tasks that fit in here. Some do, some don't. FTP serve is not one of these, okay? So if you're running FTP serve, you don't need to delay the start TTLS. The TN3270 configuration is pretty simple. You comment out everything but this TTLS port and your port number. So if you want to do TTLS port, in my case 992, that's really all that goes in your telnet parm statement. That's it. Everything else is in the ATTLS Pageant policy, okay? Now, this is, if you have an existing SSL certificate, that may suffice. These are the RACF commands to generate a self-signed cert. Of course, if you don't want to have a self-signed cert, if you want to have a real cert, you can do it. But I borrowed these from Tim Raley's TLS session, and I got a link to it here. But basically, you know, these are all the RAC dsert commands to generate. I've highlighted the RSA size. There's been a lot of talk. let me back up. I did a lot of research on cipher suites, keys, hashing. That all went as part of this. RSA 1024 is considered not technically secure. Okay, they want you to go to RSA 2048 as a minimum. So that's a big recommendation for me to you, is to use RSA 2048 on your certs. Okay, you're going to create the key ring and connect certificates and users. And here's my key ring is I'm going to call TCP/IP ring 1. And start 1 is I've got a Z, D, and T system at home, and they use start 1 as kind of a default for almost everything. But you would probably have like, TCP/IP in here maybe, and things like that. So here's your digit cert, gen cert, and so on. And then those are all your RACF commands. And if you're CA, ACF2, or top secret, obviously you use the equivalents. So I use the OMS-MF config assistant to create the policy, but I'm going to give you the cookie cutter. There's two USS files, etcpageant.conf and etcpageant_ttls.conf. There are samples for both in the user LPP TCP/IP samples directory, and updating these samples is way easier than config assistant. Okay? Not to knock config assistant, but it's real for a simple setup like this. Config assistant is overkill. Config assistant is when you have to do a ton of different policies in Pageant. Then config assistant can make it easier to manage. But for just a TN3270, it's overkill. And it actually takes a lot longer to do it that way. So there's only, in the pageant.conf file, there's only 2 lines that you need. You just need to say pageant TTLS conf and then pageant TTLS conf flush and purge. Flush and purge will remove the TTLS rules when Pageant has to come down for some reason. Because without Pageant running, if TTLS is still in effect, nothing's going to be able to connect. So you're going to update, you're going to take the samples here, and the sample contains FTP, RExec, a whole bunch of stuff. So what I did was I just, again, you're going to see a Pageant TTLS conf for TN3270 only. Okay? Yes, question?
You realize those files can also be NDS states. They don't have to be.
The comment is that these files can be MVS data sets, and that's accurate. That's absolutely correct. The reason I use these files is that the Pageant sample proc out of the box runs with these files. I would have to modify it to point to the MVS data sets. That's the main reason I did it. So here I have my ATTLS policy, and this is all generated. This was actually generated by Config Assistant with the comments. Okay. Basically, what you need to look at here are the local port range ref and the remote port range ref. These are includes called port R1 and port R2. That'll be later in the member. The other thing down here in the TTLS group action, you have to have TTLS enabled on. Okay. Over here, in the TTLS environment advanced parms, these 2 things I had to have. Application control has to be on, and handshake timeout has to be 10. Okay? So without those, then it doesn't work very well. Handshake timeout, I think, was set to 1 or 0, and I was having problems with sessions not being able to connect because the handshake timeout was too low. So just keep raising this number until you finally stop having that timeout. On my system, 10 worked. Okay. Here's the key ring, that TCP/IP ring 1 that I created a couple pages earlier. That's where you specify that in the key ring parms. Now here, the cipher suites. Cipher suites was kind of like the key of where everything is. This is going to be the strength of your encryption. Okay. Notice that here we have all AES 256 with SHA-384. Now, the reason I have these in here that are AES 256 with SHA-1 or 128 or DES with SHA, you may have older devices that cannot connect to TLS 1.2. Until you remediate those devices, you're going to have to support them, so you may have to have lower cipher suites here. Now here's the port range, includes from before, and port R1 here, this was our incoming port, and it's 992. And then these are all the ephemeral ports that'll be set up for the devices that attach. Okay? So that's pretty much the ATTLS policy. You can cut and paste that, and it should start working for you. Choose your cipher suites with the highest level of security. SHA-1 has been deprecated because it's been proven to have collisions. And here's a hyperlink to that. The NSA had a document, they no longer recommend SHA-256 as a hash or AES-128. So I've set AES-256, SHA-384 as a minimum level, okay? So I use the Pageant proc in TCP/IP CESA inst Pageant, and it runs as is, out of the box. That's why I use the pageant.conf in etc. I create a user ID and define a started class for it, and I rack list the started class and refresh it. You need these serve-auth class profiles because if Pageant or TTLS is not active on the system, these profiles will allow tasks to continue to run. So it's EZB init stack sysname TCP/IP. Sysname cannot be a wildcard. I tried to put an asterisk there. He doesn't like it. He wants the name for each profile. So here are the tasks at minimum you need to define from a TCP/IP perspective. But I also found NFS, CICS, your DB2 dist regions, MQ masters and chins, and we use the QPASA monitor, so QPASA also needed it. We run CAESP as a job scheduler, OpenSSH, syslogd, CSSMTP. If you don't cover all these, you will get, well, here are the RACF commands that I use to generate all that. And if you don't do it, you'll get some of these. Like one time when I forgot to do the serve auths, because you can actually obey file this in. When I forgot to do the serve auths, I just did the obey file and everything worked, and at the next IPL, everything fell apart. So I got this message from TCP/IP that the serve auth was not found, and then for every other, like TN3270, all those other tasks I listed, I got the ICH 408I. From time to time, you may get something like this where a BPX1 sock failed. This reason code here, when you look it up with BPXM text, it'll tell you that TTLS was not enabled. So you can obey file this in. You would obey file your TCP/IP profile, obey file your TN3270 profile, and start Pageant. If you do this, don't forget to change your TCP/IP and TN3270 proc to harden up those changes. Okay, well, apologies to the Baja men. Who let the ZOMS dog out? Who? Okay. Yes, question.
My company was being hurt a lot because of the implementation. I just like to share a comment on that. And by the way, this was really great summary. I wish we had that summary before also when we were doing the TLS. I recommend people, if they are interested in ATTLS implementation, be careful about the cipher list, because if you do wrong on that cipher list, your TCP/IP address usage will be up to more than 2 or 3 processors because of the cost of cipher.
It's a good comment.
And also, we had a PM1, and it took more than 4 or 5 PMs for IBM to figure out. They told us we might enable cache. We did this, it didn't work, and then we look at the RSA uploading of crypto coprocessor, and it didn't work out too. I mean, we didn't figure out from that perspective. Also, I recommend also people for monitoring ATTLS and uploading processes, because IBM is getting it closely. Some of the crypto functions are not monitored a lot from relevant and asymmetric ports. So especially for RSA, and look at the uploading process, please think of GSK serve address space to open.
Okay. All right, the comment is that be careful with your cipher suites because the CPU overhead might be large if you pick an incorrect cipher suite. And take advantage of your crypto coprocessor and take advantage of the ICSF functions. I didn't really get into that part of it, but ICSF has to be properly configured for all this as well. So for ZOSMF, if we go back, ZOSMF 1.13, we remember, was really resource intensive. It required 2 gig, 120 MIPS to start. On small systems, could take 20 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. With 2.1, we got the WAS Liberty profile, drastically reduced memory and MIPS to start it up. Even on small systems like mine, it was a 5-minute max startup. Once up, you got a 1 to 2 second browser response. And ZOSMF V2R1 looked really promising. And with all the reduced resources, it looked like we might have a viable platform. So I was looking really a lot forward to ZOSMF V2R2 because we had REST APIs, workflow, WLM, config assistant enhancements, simplified config, external plugins, et cetera, a lot of features in V2R2. Luckily for me, I have a ZD&T, it comes pre-configured. I don't have to do all the stuff you guys have to go through, sorry. So it just makes it easier on me. No, I'm not sorry. The comment was, I'm not sorry. And yes, that was accurate. So after making appropriate TCP IP changes, I fired it up. CFZ SIM up immediately, which was great, much better than V2R1. Same thing with the Angel, both came up really fast. But then we got to SVR1. It came up in 11.5 minutes and had 44.5 million EXCPs. V2R1 came up in 5 minutes with 5.3 million EXCPs. Now, SVR1 was trying to trick you a little bit because he gave you the initialized message after 2 minutes and 6 million EXCPs. But he kept taking CPU and I/O, and then he kept saying, okay, this plugin's initialized, that plugin's initialized, that plugin's initialized, over and over again. My browser response, about 5 to 10 seconds, but in some cases it got up to 60 seconds. It was really bad. So I was kind of bummed out because I was really looking forward to it, but V2R2 clearly worse than V2R1. So we got all the extra plugins, got more initialized. No good explanation yet for the poor browser response. Because of all this, I canceled my V2R2 user experience in San Jose because all I had was bad news. I really wanted to give IBM a chance to respond, and they really didn't have answers at first. It took like probably about a month before I got good solid answers. So they gave me these Java settings, which you'll find did help. So there's this JVM options in this directory, and they asked me to add this quick start, but it was already there, so that wasn't it. Then they asked me to take this X share classes, which was none, and add all this stuff to that cache. And then add these following 2 lines to add some more cache. So I recycled ZOSMF. Didn't really affect the elapsed time in EXCPs at startup, but the browser response was way better, 1 to 5 seconds typically. So that's acceptable, still not quite as good as V2R1. So the other thing that happened that I didn't realize is they use Knowledge Center for Z under the covers for help. So if you request help, you get KC for Z. So
Question, the Java enhancements, are those available through any kind of an APAR? Or?
the question is, are the Java enhancements through any kind of an APAR? No, you just make them yourself. I don't think IBM has published, Gary, I don't believe, IBM has not published anything officially, but plug that into your JVM options, ZOSMF should start cooking a little better for you. As an experiment, they recommended disabling KC for Z. So if you rename this EAR file, it comes up in 8 minutes and 27 million EXCPs, which is an improvement. But if you request help, you get that. I don't know if you can see it, but there's Mozilla Firefox. That is what you get if you rename the EAR file for ZOSMF help. So, helpless, yes, we are helpless. Okay, so quicker startup, obviously, not worth losing the help. So I renamed it back, and IBM is looking at solutions for this. Some that we've discussed are maybe a dedicated repository on ZOS, on-prem or off-prem repositories. Stay tuned for future developments here. IBM is aware that they cannot continue to, as they add plugins, they realize that their performance cannot do this. They need to have performance do this, or better yet, do that for response time. So what are the lessons learned? I was kind of surprised that I was the first one to bring this up 18 months after GA. So what I recommended to IBM is to test future versions on small iron, or better yet, on a ZD&T like me. Zip processors are going to make a huge difference for you, and make sure that your zap-zip equal yes is set. Believe it or not, one of my clients, zap-zip was no. We changed it to yes, their zip utilization doubled, their bill went down, they were happy. So ZOSMF is strategic. IBM wants it to run efficiently. So there's coming improvements in Java. Java 9 should help. So with that, I will turn it over to Marianne Matthias.
It's not on. Can you hear me better now? All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about symbols. First of all, how many people saw my symbols presentation a couple years ago? Well, you were in it, Skip. I make extensive use of symbols in every way I possibly can. So a quick trivia question. Anybody know where Mr. Yuck came from? No. Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. We may or may not be back in Pittsburgh in August of 2019. Is that announced? It is. Okay. All right. We will be back. Okay. So back in the day, there was an IEA SIM update program, and there was a rec out there to make it more formal, to support it. Not because there were any issues with it, but a lot of us can't run any kind of software that's not supported. And I bet if you read that screen when you log on, you agree that you will not download anything. And that could include a Rex exec off of IBM main, if you take that literally. So this was one of our top 39 Rex. And IBM did go ahead and formalize it, made a great command out of it. It fits basically all of the other ParmLab members that we have, in that you can replace the entire IEA SIM XX member with a command. The IEA SIM update, I believe you used to have to do by symbol. So this is really nice. I like doing the set load IPL with IEA SIM, and he comes right back and tells me what my members are. Because you don't know if somebody else might have changed it since the IPL. So I like to verify what that is. So what I did here was I looked at this symbol, CBW test, copied it for you so you see it's there. Here's a D symbols that shows that he's out there. And then I went to the IEA SIM 0 Charlie member via ISPF edit or whatever edit Ed uses, and deleted the line with CBW test on it. Really simple. Did the set load IEA SIM, and you can see that there's no CBW test member now. Piece of cake. There's your D symbols, and he's not there. Love it. I rock now because I think I can get videos into PowerPoint. Although this was a GIF, but I was not able to get a GIF into PowerPoint. So this is just bounce it. There's a little, well, for me it was relatively new, but you know, if Tom Wasik is here, he's going to say it's, what, 8 years old, is the SDSF S.sys panel, which shows you all kinds of interesting information. You know, essentially, you don't have to do a D space M equals CPU anymore to see this kind of information. But he also shows you MSU, sys MSU, and average MSU, which I love. And you can see that my numbers are probably a lot smaller than, you know, US Bank or GM or whoever. But that's okay. But what that means is I keep fairly close eye on these numbers. So I kind of kept this to myself, because it's the kind of thing you don't want to tell other people about, because then you have to answer questions about it. No, we're supposed to share. So for one day, I had to change the defined capacity. It was all urgent, and we thought that this was doing this, and we need to back that guy down. Fine. Change the defined capacity, and looked at SDSF sys, didn't update it. So of course they're saying, you didn't update it. Well, I did update it. So I decided to bounce SDSF aux, and kind of like playing pin the tail on the donkey, I got that one right. That's exactly what you needed to do. And he went out and looked at his options again. This is the SDSF aux. But what I found out later when I went to document this, because I was going to open a requirement for it, is that it's already out there. Somebody else found it. Tom Wassick has already fixed it. Or should I say Gary? Whoever. But this is the APAR that tells you about it. Evidently, it was just not going out to either the right place or going out at all to get that to be updated. And it did say that you can restart SDSF aux. That's great. Yoy is another Pittsburgh term. It sort of means yay, except for in the Myron Cope speak. And of course, there are 2 PTFs, and they were on 2016-12, which didn't make it into 12's RSU, which is, of course, where I was. So it wasn't on yet. It also, and it shouldn't be, but just FYI, it's not hyper, it's not PE, it's just a nice, quiet little APAR that slides in beautifully. And I'm going to turn it over to Sam Knudsen. Are you mic'd?
Yep. Good morning. So we've got a couple little nuggets left to share, Skip and I. And I'm gonna give you just a very brief one, and this one's just a little bit of fun. So you may have seen, we've been doing more Agile and DevOps. We've got a DevOps track at Share, and so especially as we've got more development that's being done, and it's being talked about in those tracks, you might have seen some people wandering around Share or maybe back at your shop with sort of highly decorated equipment. And all sorts of stickers and animals and symbols, and you wonder, what's going on with these people? Well, as we have for years, coders, hackers, programmers, system administrators, those startup folks, they all like to decorate things, to show their personality, and that's great if you get a good personality. Some people's personalities maybe don't need to be shared, but everyone likes to be an individual. We're all unique. And laptops, they all look pretty much the same. These, sort of nice, boring black boxes. So you want to make yours look a little different, so you can identify it in a crowd, and it shows what tribe of people you belong to. And this is our tribe. We're mainframers. Well, you don't really see a lot of laptops that cry out to you, "I'm a mainframer." And my mission is to change that. So. And I wondered, what is this actually called? So it turns out there is a word in the Merriam-Webster dictionary for this, and it is individuation. So, and the act of doing that is individuating, and I would like to help you all individuate as mainframers.
Thank you.
So this is perhaps a typical, DevOps distributed laptop, maybe a Java programmer, someone who's doing some Hadoop. They're using Jenkins. That's Ninja Jenkins. The CloudBees guys make about 400 different kinds of Jenkins. Every time they go someplace, they make a new one. So you can find Irish Jenkins or Sailor Jenkins. But there's all sorts of things on there. But there's no mainframe stuff, huh? Okay. So here is my laptop, and this is kind of reflects some of my personality and things that I've worked with. And well, what's that up there? All right, well, I'll show you where to get one of those. And then down here, all right, so this one's got a little person. It's, I've worked with 3420s. Don't mess with me. I know how to mount round tapes. I even know where the right ring is. So, but these are all things that were kind of meaningful to me and fun, and they just built up on my laptop over time. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to replace it soon. So there's no telling what it's going to look like in Sacramento. But I thought maybe it would be helpful if you could, get a few of these things. So let me show you where to get some mainframe stickers. These nice vinyl die-clads, die-cut stickers, the same as the DevOps folks had. And this is my favorite one. I just ordered this one up, because I want one of these on my new laptop. It's the nice Z13, Z14 style, CPU. And I think this is a fair warning that, is probably just as well that people recognize who they're dealing with. And if you've been around a while, I do know how to mount a round tape, and how to repair a round tape, and when to put the right ring in and when to take it out. All of these come from Redbubble. And in fact, if you hit that URL or you go to Redbubble and you search on stickers and mainframe, you will get these and some other ones that'll come up, and you can order them up and stick them to the back of your iPad or your laptop or anything else that you'd like. And in fact, they've got a really good selection. It's more than just a couple of things. We would all like to make the mainframe great again. And this is kind of a mashup. It's a little bit of a politics and Tron mashup for those of you who've got, there's a lot of pop culture going on here. But also, you can again, put some antique peripherals on there to match up with sort of your current ones, and the possibilities are pretty good. But I kept looking, and Cafe Press, another source of customized material, also has some nice stickers. Everybody loves mainframes, and the sort of the keep calm and carry on theme is always good. Even a little plug for the Hercules folks and people who want to run MVS 3.8 on their laptop in an emulator. All right, that's cool. And what if you just want to make your own? See, I wanted this one, so I made this myself. And in fact, I got a bunch of these. If you want one, just hit me up afterwards. And I made that at Sticker Mule. And so the hint is, anybody who can use Microsoft Paint, because they haven't taken that away from us, I guess, now, yet, you can whip up a sticker and have it in your mailbox in a week. It's great. So I am counting on some of the more creative among you to bring some interesting contributions back to Sacramento. And I think this is the next avenue for creativity. We've kind of moved on. And well, what did we move on from? So we moved on from buttons. Buttons used to be the thing. And so I just wanted to point out, before we had stickers, we individuated using buttons. And Barry Merrill, and I did ask Barry's permission for this, by the way, Barry Merrill has the definitive collection of share buttons and buttons that have been put out by vendors. He also has the song Bony Fingers, and you'll have to read the whole history on that. And this is some really old share history there. But buttons are the fun part, because he has tons of buttons. And in fact, Barry, I believe, donated his coat of many buttons, which he often wore to share and brought in a suitcase.
And never washed.
It was no comment on the personal hygiene aspect of the coat of many buttons. But anyway, buttons were created for fun, and a lot of times, like other sort of political buttons, they were made to make a sort of pointed statement, that maybe a feature that IBM had introduced didn't exactly please users, or a policy, or to support something that they did show allegiance to. And so over time, the best buttons were the funny buttons. The really best buttons were the buttons that were both funny, dirty, and pointed. So Barry has a database at mxg.com, and you can search on any particular product or theme, or you could just randomly find a button a day. And these were just a few favorites that cropped up. I was a performance and tuning guy, and certainly when MVS came along, part of the genesis of the performance project was that this thing didn't run real well, and that's why I have high hopes. ZOSMF is the future, and it will fly someday. Because God is my witness, I believe turkeys can fly. So Jez 2, Jez 3 have always had a little bit of acrimony between them, but it's all good now. And as I said, the best buttons are just a little bit funny and a little bit dirty, and sometimes they are policy comments. Still not a big fan of OCO. I learned a lot of what I know from reading source code. So, and if you don't have a button, you can have a T-shirt. And they didn't have any of these down in the ST this week, but it just happens I found out where you can get them from. and again, the best ones are ones that just push the boundaries just a little bit, because we want to have some fun. So these are some of my favorites of Bob Thomas's T-shirts, in particular this one, Dead by Donkey, the Long Live the Mainframe. So you can get those out at Teespring and just order them up in whatever size you like. And now I'm going to pass it to Skip Robinson, who's going to take us home.
Thank you for sticking out to the very end. If you have to leave, I understand you can get up and leave, but if your plane flies in 10 minutes, you might as well stay here. This is where you're going to be for a while. Okay, this is just a couple of slides on an issue that people should be aware of, and that is that you must get to distributed console before ZOS 2.3, otherwise you can't IPL. It's been around for a long time. There are a couple of ways of checking. There's a health checker or a display command. You can issue it to make sure that you are at distributed. If not, the change is not very difficult. There are some suggestions here for how you get there. It's a deal. You're going to have to go through change control and all that. But don't, it's not an overwhelming task. Okay, I probably am going to stop with this one instead of my next one. There are situations where you have SMP needing to serialize installation of PTFs. And they're basically the internal serialization where they have to be installed in a sequence. First this PTF, then this one, then this one. Or you have to have several different PTFs on at the same time that may not even be part of the same FMID. So that's where we use pre or rec to make sure that SMP understands the way to put PTFs on to make things work. However, there is another thing that I call sort of coordinated, I call environmental PTFs. And for example, what's often called a preconditioning PTF that has to be on first before the second PTF can be on. When I say on, I mean actually running in the environment. We've had a number of these over the years, especially having to do with XCF and use of the coupling facilities or the couple data sets. And they're given into at least two sequences, two segments. You have a PTF-A and you have a PTF-B. SMP can't really handle this situation because the truth is the PTF-A must be on the entire Plex before PTF-B can be on any system in the Plex. And SMP has no idea that because that's you. That's the installer. It's your migration process. So there's no way that SMP can actually manage this. So this has to be handled by the person who's in charge. So my preference for coordinating this kind of preconditioning PTF is with a user hold. User hold has been in SMP forever. This is the only real use I found for it, and that is just, it's a way to tell SMP not to put on a particular PTF for reasons that you can see with your eyes, and you know when it's time to put it on. So for example, we had PTF A and B. A has to be everywhere before B goes on. So you create a hold record that looks just like this, hold PTF-B, whatever it actually is, and the FMID, because that's required for a hold, and then the keyword user. Because it's user, SMP, IBM will never get involved with this. So IBM will never issue anything that would have to do with this because it doesn't do user guys, it only does system guys. And for a reason, you can put in whatever you want. It may be limited to 8 characters, so I just typically put in the name of the PTF-A that you're waiting for, or you could put multi-sys. It doesn't matter what you put there, really. But just something that when you see it, you'll know what's going on. You have to put a date. That's required, and typically it's the date that you install it. And then a comment, and this is the key. The comment will say PTF-A must be running everywhere before installing PTF-B. That's really what's going on there. So you receive this into your SMP stream, and this will hold PTF-B over successive mass applies. And by mass apply, I mean, which is the, whatever. Okay, mass applies will be apply PTFs, bypass hold sys.
That right there.
Oh, okay, I thought that was 2 things. Okay, so bypass hold sys. In other words, you just want to put on an entire set of stuff. You have looked at all the hold records. You're satisfied that they're all taken care of. So I want to put everything on. And anything with a hold sys will just go on. But the user will not be covered by this because it's a user hold. And each time you do an apply like this, you'll get a message that says PTF-B is not applied, and it will tell you why. It's held. It looks like an error. Well, okay, sort of an error. But you will be reminded on every single apply, and no matter who does the apply. You now, you later, or somebody else is still going to get that same message. Now, once you know the PTF-A is out there and running, you've migrated it, it's where it needs to be, then you put in a release of that PTF, and the syntax is release. You need the FMID again, also a user, and you need to specify the reason and the hold date. And that will remove that hold on PTF-B. The next apply will put that PTF on. Now, there are other possible ways, just to mention, to do it that I've come across. People say, well, I'll just exclude it, which would work, okay? It would work. The trouble with exclude is that it only lives in the actual SMP job that you submit, okay? It has to be there, that word exclude. If you, at a later date, or somebody else at any time, runs another mass supply without that keyword exclude, then PTFB is going to go on. The nice thing about the user hold is that it goes into the SMP database. It stays there indefinitely so that you won't forget, and neither will anybody else, until you are ready to actually take it off. Okay, I'm going to, oh, that's it, thank you. I had one other thing, but fine.
You get to save that one.
I get to save that one for the next time, yes, okay. All right, so this is our list of people that we have acknowledged as having helped us through thick or thin. And I get to say, see you in Sacramento. Thank you very much for coming.